Radio TV network and is fighting the info war. And boy, we couldn't think of a better time to have him with his economic knowledge and all of his financial predictions, unfortunately, coming true like prophecy, with the debt limit, with the Chinese communists lecturing us and the IMF lecturing us like we're some third world country being conquered by financial interest, with the so-called government shutdown, arresting people that show up at the national parks, letting illegals have a demonstration on the mall, but closing it to everyone else. Former Congressman Ron Paul, thank you for joining us, sir.
Good to be with you today, Alex.
There's so much happening. I mean, what do we tackle first?
Well, why don't we solve all the problems of Washington? Let the bus come. It's coming soon. They're not going to work their way out of it, so it's going to collapse. Let's just keep working on the fact that when we get around to rebuilding this whole entire system, that we do it the way it was intended originally and actually improve upon it. I think the concept of liberty has advanced even since the time of the founders, but we've regressed so desperately far from what they intended. I think we should anticipate that, in the future, in the next several years, you're going to see a big collapse of this. And then we have to talk about what kind of a monetary policy, why we need to bring our troops home, why we have to quit expanding the deficit every day, and you raising these debt limits and planning on total socialized medicine. That all has to end, and it's going to end because it's going to fail. I think we should anticipate that and look at it as an opportunity, and that's our job to make sure that people know what is best for us. And I'm always arguing the case that less government, more freedom is what we need.
Dr. Ron Paul's our guest. Sir, many top analysts have said that the American empire is in its beginning stages of death. And now a lot of columnists and others are saying, look, this looks like the beginning of the end of this kleptocratic mega government. What is your take on when the big event is coming, or will it be a group of events?
Well, it's hard to protect the timing, but I think I agree with the assessment that it will end. And I look at it like a building standing but no foundation. Yeah, it's sort of sitting there and wobbling, but it hasn't crashed. And I think it will because, the financial system is so unstable. It's totally based on debt and confidence in a dollar and confidence in the Fed that they'll always print the right amount of money and they'll always keep the interest rates right and they'll always bail out everybody that needs bailed out, which I think is a total hoax. So the big event could occur next week. It could occur in 5 years from now. And I just think it's too difficult to predict. But so far, there has been a steady erosion in that direction. That is, there's less confidence now. The Fed has to buy more foreign debt and more mortgage debt because foreigners are buying a lot less. But the trust is still there. They're still anticipating the Fed is credible and the dollar is still credible. But eventually that will be lost, and exactly when that's going to happen, I don't know. But I would think in the next several years you're going to see some very major changes and a real challenge to all of us on what's going to replace it.
Dr. Paul, Gallup and other polls show the lowest approval rating ever for government in general, the lowest level of trust. I think that's a positive thing. That tells me people are finally starting to realize how much trouble we're in.
Absolutely. If somebody's trying to recover from alcoholism or drugs, they say it can't be done unless they acknowledge, that there's a problem and things are very negative before you start doing the right things. And I think a 5%, trust factor for the government is really a good sign, because that means that now they'll quit believing the government. I mean, they don't trust the government. They don't believe the government. The government always lies to us, and whether it's foreign policy or domestic policy. And then we have Clapper and these other guys get on these committees and lie to us about what they're doing and how they're spying on us. So the people have a right to challenge this. And I think the Internet helps. I think radio shows like yours helps. I think everything that we do and say helps, and it's so much different than it was before we had these vehicles. And, of course, the system was always assumed to be much healthier than it is today. But, just think how quickly the Soviet system disappeared. I think that was the greatest miracle or event, at least in the 20th century, that nobody was, the day before, or the month before, or the year before said, oh, next year the Soviet system would be gone. Everybody would have considered that person nuts. But it was fragile, and it fell apart, and went quickly, and thank goodness we didn't have to have a nuclear war in order to get rid of the Soviet system. So I think we're probably 1987 right now, where the Soviets were at 87, and within 2 years it was gone.
Sir, I 100% agree with what you just stated. In fact, I've made the point that I believe we're 1987. If you were comparing it to East Germany, 1989, we're about 1989. If you compare it to 1991, I hope that Homeland Security just stands down if some type of collapse happens. It doesn't try to go around squeezing the public, but they appear to be organizing to do just that. But here's the good news. I like your take on this. We saw the world stand up, including Congress and others, led by your son, saying no to backing al-Qaeda, no to expanding the war in Syria. We've seen Obama's total push to get our guns, failed for now. Basically, everything they've tried has failed. They got Obamacare, but now they can't even implement that. Maybe Mitch McConnell's right. Maybe let them try to implement it instead of them blaming libertarians and conservatives for the mess that's happening.
No, I think we're at the point, just let it go. Not that I criticize those who have been fighting it. I was fighting it all the chances I've ever had. But I think let it go. Maybe the people are so angry now, again, loss of trust, they can't even sign up. It's such a mess. But you know what? You mentioned the change in attitude about NSA as well as Syria. I think that is just great stuff. But even in another issue, sometimes more controversial for some people, and that is the government has just about conceded with the state's right to legalize the use of marijuana. And that is a freedom issue, and it's a states' right issue.
It is.
And it's something even liberals, sort of like.
It's a bellwether.
Because the liberals are defending states' rights. But, they're starting to talk about state laws changing monetary policy and standing up for their rights. So I think nullification is here today. It's as healthy as it's been in, the last 200 years, really. It was only tested early on. And but I think it represents nullification. They're just backing off because when the people overwhelm, the politicians will respond. And I know it's very frustrating with a lot of people. They say, no, they never listen. But that's because there aren't enough people. When the numbers are there and you pointed it out, they had to respond and rein in Obama when it came to Syria. And hopefully the softening stand against Iran is also a reflection of the people's attitude. 75% of the people don't want us to go to war against Iran. I don't even understand why you'd have 5% of the people want to start a war with the Iranians. That is so stupid. And yet there's still some out there, and the neocons are crying up a blue because of all that, and that he's backed down a little bit. But it's the American people that count. That's why I think attitudes are so important.
Sure, and former Congressman Ron Paul joins us. I want to get into homeschooling and your new book that really is at the heart of the solution here before you got to go in about 5 minutes. But first off, looking at the government shutdown itself and nullification overall, California just nullified the NDAA secret arrest attack on habeas corpus. So, again, it does show even the grassroots left can begin to understand the tyranny and recognize states' rights and nullification are there for a reason. But looking at the government shutdown, you've only got 17% of the government that's actually shut down, and that's stuff that the people actually use, like national parks and other areas. They're giving tickets to people that jog on the sidewalk by national parks. They're closing areas of Arlington Cemetery, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the Iwo Jima thing. I mean, the instinct of authoritarians to try to dominate everyone when it's backfiring, it does give credence to your point that they're really a bunch of buffoons.
Yeah, and this whole thing, about the shutdown, is a farce. It's political gamesmanship, and it's amazing that the president doesn't get much more negative press out of this, but, his buddies in the media keep trying to prop him up. But there is no real shutdown. They're always passing a law or Obama makes a ruling. Yesterday it was the issue of taking care of the individuals that have died in the war and given them their benefits. You know that they can do anything they want. If they can bail out nations and banks, everything else to the tune of trillions of dollars, they're not going to allow a default, and they could do anything that they desire here. The only thing they close down are those visible things that have a political implication, and hopefully the American people will be cynical enough and realize that it's a joke, it's a real joke and a farce on what they're doing. And I think this is good that the people, are waking up and realizing, it's a bunch of politicians trying to outdo each other.
Well, just to prove what you just said, look at what they did for months when they couldn't pass a debt level increase. They just said, our debt's not going up, and did an accounting gimmick. So Obama's saying, we're going to crash if you don't do what I say. He's the one engaged in financial terrorism, and I want you to speak to that. And then Janet Yellen, if folks thought Ben was a hyperinflator, wow, I'm told she's the actual author of this, Doctor.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this October 17th is another farce, just like the closing down of government. They should be worrying about the breakdown of government, which will come. But the date is arbitrary, picked out of the clear blue, and the national debt have reached the point where it is right now. The official debt reached it in May, so they've been doing what they want to do. So they always could do this whole idea that they don't, that they won't have money to pay the interest. Why? Who cares whether they pay the interest to the Federal Reserve? And they hold $2 trillion. So you could take care of this debt if you're looking for just excuses to prop it up. But this is just a gimmick to try to frighten the people and say, if you don't do it, your benefits are going to disappear and government won't be there, and the president needs your support. But it's always there. And we have to realize what the Fed has done for the bailouts. And they're always there. They bailed out the system to the tune of trillions of dollars. And now that we're getting a new chairwoman of the Fed, we shouldn't feel any more relaxed about it, because she is a much greater inflationist than even Greenspan and Bernanke.
Wow.
And but she tells us she's all for transparency. I wonder if that means she's going to be for my audit the Fed bill. But don't hold your breath on that. But she believes she supported all the QEs, and she would even do more. She is not going to back off, because there's a little bit of immediate pain with the stock market. If you even back off from $85 billion of new money every month, or to 75, it would be a hysterical reaction on Wall Street. She's not going to do that. So my bet is that we are going to continue to inflate and continue to destroy the dollar until the world rejects the dollar, and that's what we should be concerned about.
I want to talk about the book in closing, but briefly, Peter Schiff, who I know is one of your top economic advisors and a great mind, and many of his predictions have come true, like the fact that they wouldn't taper. He said last Friday here, and DrudgeReport.com picked it up, became a national story. He said they may want to collapse because then they can bring in tyranny as the solution, and he's worried about that. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, the former head of policy at the Treasury, said the same thing. Many others are. I mean, is there a method to the madness? Do you think the Obama people, just like he's getting away with Obamacare right now and getting away with being the one behind the shutdown?
It's hard to say, because you'd have to really read their minds and their motivations, which I can't do. I think it's closer to stupidity than it is that, let's have a collapse so we can do such and such. But remember, how many in the administrations have always said, don't ever let a crisis go to waste? So it's probably a lot of that, too.
Sure.
The policies are going to bring on these crises.
Sure.
And that has always been used as an excuse to expand the role of government. Just like the Fed. When they create the bubbles and then they create the bursting of the bubbles, then they say, well, what we need is more Fed. It's on and on.
Sure, but are you concerned about the continued increase of militarized police and that martial law could come during a collapse?
Absolutely. That should be a major concern. And this, of course, hopefully, this whole move toward nullification and kicking the feds out, I hope that continues to grow. And when they run out of money and they go broke, that's going to happen. What's happening? Maybe a good place to look is in Detroit. They don't have a police department anymore of worth much, and it verges on anarchy. I'm interested to see if the crime rate goes down in Detroit. It may well go down when everybody knows they have to take care of themselves. But no, I hope the the local people, one of the worst things that happened on this local police stuff was that if they were able to confiscate property, airplanes and boats and cars, they get to keep them. It doesn't get sold and put in the treasury. They get to keep that, so they have this tremendous incentive to seize property, and then the owners, whether they're guilty or not, can practically never get it back again. That helped this whole move toward the militarization.
That's right. We have
police started acting like armies and that the federal government owns.
We have a predatory government. In closing, as you've got to go, The School Revolution, I've got my copy. I want to carry it at InfoWarsStore.com. It's on Amazon, everywhere. I've studied this myself. If we take our children back, I mean, the statists say this. They say, we've got your kids. We're going to win in the end. Now they're not letting them play dodgeball, football. They're banning stamps federally that show kids doing sports. I mean, this is a cult of control freaks. If we take our children away from them, isn't that the key way to win? Former Congressman Ron Paul, tell us about your book in closing.
Yes, absolutely, and that is the goal, because Obama wants to get them at the age of 4. It's a bad move, and homeschooling is an option. It's not for every single person, but there has to be always an ability to opt out of a government system. Hopefully we get an opt-out on medical care, but that doesn't look good. But right now we still have the right to opt out with private schools and homeschooling, and I am going to do my darndest, because every single day you hear a story of some stupid thing that happened in the government schools, and I said, there they go. Get their kids out as soon as possible.
Congressman Ron Paul, we wish you were still there in Congress, and I guess you're just moving forward, writing books, doing the TV show. That's having a lot of success.
Traveling, speaking out, going to the college campuses, and things are going well, and I appreciate the chance to be with you again today.
You bet. RonPaulChannel.com. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Doc.
You bet. There goes former Congressman Ron Paul. I keep calling him Congressman. I've been interviewing him for 17 years since he got back in Congress. I've been interviewing that guy before he got back in Congress. He had one term in the 80s. And then wouldn't go along with the Republicans increasing debt and stuff, so he got kicked out as a libertarian, and then came back in 1996. And I've been interviewing Ron Paul since he was running again. And Rand would come on, because Ron Paul would come on every few weeks and get support, because his district used to come up into the edge of Austin all the way down to Houston, and they rewrote it a bunch. And then Rand would call the office and say, hey, we need an extra push right before the election. But the last few times he was elected, it was like 70% of the vote. And that's when they rewrote his district into liberal areas, thinking it would beat him. He would go then talk to those folks and defeat them. So always great to have former Congressman Ron Paul on the broadcast. And I just can't believe we're sitting here talking with a straight face about a government that no one has been able to sign up at healthcare.gov. The ones that have been able to have gotten phone numbers with the media and called and been able to be signed up on the news. And Mike Adams was actually joining us. He's not just the health ranger. He's a great computer programmer and a software engineer. He's helped us out a lot with stuff on the back end before of our sites, headsupnaturalnews.com. He's going to be coming on to talk about a whole group of articles. In fact, they're probably in my folder, if not, print me his last 3-4 articles, dealing with the different facets of how it's a fake website, how it's not real, how they're grabbing your IP address. Because everything I saw him writing a week and a half ago, a week ago, 2 days ago, days later comes out in the corporate media and turns out it's true. Of course, I mean, I knew he was saying it and he's accurate, but it's just that they're having to admit it. He's breaking so much of this and they're not getting credit, of course. That's how it always works. Look, I really don't care about getting credit. I'll be honest with you. I just get excited when what we cover later comes out in the kleptocratic press. And again, the kleptocratic Decepticon press isn't as powerful as it used to be. It's a shadow of itself. But still, when it finally is there, then people will address it more, even in the alternative media and even in some of the more fair areas of the old media. And so it is important to kind of force it out to get them to cover it. The problem is the folks that get their news from mainstream media are already so dumbed down. Does it even really matter? I mean, we are the real press here. And so even if it's not breaking in the mainstream media, it's breaking here. I mean, we told you there were missing nukes on September 2nd. And then they started talking about firing all these nuke commanders and nukes are going to blow up the East Coast, exactly where the nukes were sent. I mean, I don't know what this means. The people that gave us the info were totally freaked out and totally on target and totally credible and totally high level. And you know, It was a big circus at Dyess Air Force Base over this because they weren't supposed to send those out. And reportedly took the base commander giving the order. And by the way, if this hadn't happened, the base commander would come out and say I was a liar, wouldn't they? I mean, I want you to understand something. I don't just say this every day. I'm risking my life bringing you this information, okay, on the nukes. Because they can ignore me on the big issues we cover because everybody else is covering it now, too. Alex Jones was a lonely voice 18 years ago. I'm not a lonely voice now. And that's a good thing. But I tell you, it's this whistleblower stuff. It's this whistleblower stuff that really, my spidey sense says, man, you are crossing the line. And I just want it on record that I know I am. And that I think Anthony has a lot of courage, the rest of my crew do as well. So please pray for us all. But please pray for me up front and my family, because you know who's walking absolute point on this A-team operation against the New World Order, folks. I am blasting right down the navigation shaft on the Death Star, and I've seen a lot of journalists killed. I've seen a lot of people shut down, put in jail, and I got TIE fighters on my butt. And I'm trying to fire this torpedo down the reactor shaft, to use the cheesy analogy. And so we need your support, ladies and gentlemen, now more than ever. All right, stay with us. We're going to come back with Mike Adams via video Skype to break down not just what Obamacare does to you, but that it's a giant NSA database.